This is my true story, one that began in Georgia. It happened at a Sunday brunch when my daughter-in-law casually introduced me to her friends as nothing more than the nanny. I smiled even though my heart sank. The very next day I sold the house they were living in. I showed up at exactly 11 o'clock, the sun bright and warm, almost comforting, but inside I felt shaky, like the ground beneath me was thin and fragile. In my hands I carried a silver tray stacked with golden croissants, still warm, soft and buttery, my secret recipe, the same one my mother taught me years ago in that tiny kitchen back in Monroe. Every pastry on that tray was my way of showing love, of trying to belong in this home that I had helped buy, raise and keep afloat. When I stepped into the dining room, the laughter dipped just enough for me to feel how invisible I really was. The table was set like something out of a magazine, crystal flutes filled with mimosas, plates of smoked salmon and trout, fruit cut into perfect displays, a long mahogany table glowing under a sparkling chandelier. Guests in expensive clothes were chatting by the sideboard, where charcuterie and quiche waited to be served. Everything looked perfect, every guest seemed expected, except for me. That's when I heard her, my daughter-in-law Kelly. Her voice was smooth, polite, just sharp enough to cut as she leaned toward her friends. She lowered her tone just enough to pretend she wasn't including me, but spoke loudly enough so everyone could hear. "She used to be the nanny when my husband was little," she said. "She took good care of him, but she's a little forgetful these days. She still lives here, I guess, for appearances." My chest tightened. My hand froze over the tray. What I had brought, my care, my love, sounded like it belonged in a servant's wing. They laughed together, their smiles polite, their glances sharp. I placed the tray gently on the marble countertop. My heel clicked against the polished floor as she turned, smiling at me sweetly like poison wrapped in sugar. "Remember to leave early, ma'am," she said. "We're hosting a party tonight. You know how guests get confused." My ears burned. I swallowed hard, forcing a polite smile. She pressed a crisp $20 bill into my hand. "Pick up some snack bites," she added, her tone polished and dismissive. "And don't eat too much off the buffet." I felt the weight of that bill, the weight of every look they gave me. I wasn't family, I was a helper with a tip. My son sat across the room, smiling at a coworker's joke, glancing at me only for a second. There was no kindness in that glance, no apology, just polite distance. This was the same boy I had once read bedtime stories to, the boy I cheered for at graduations, the man whose wedding rings I had carried down the aisle. He didn't move and I didn't ask him to. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her." I looked at the chandelier, at the untouched food. I remembered the cold Atlanta nights when I stayed up to keep this house warm. I thought about the years I worked extra jobs to pay taxes and bills so they could focus on their careers. I thought about the photo of me and my grandson smiling at this very table, once proudly displayed on the mantel. That photo was gone now. My croissants sat untouched, unclaimed. No one thanked me, no one offered me a plate. I carried the tray to a quiet corner, watching the party move on without me. Laughter rose and fell like waves. My daughter-in-law checked the time, glanced at me and raised one perfect eyebrow as if asking, "Isn't it time for you to leave?" Then she turned back to her guests as if I wasn't even there. I held onto the tray like it was the only thing keeping me steady. This had once been my home and their laughter had once been mine. I brushed a strand of silver hair from my face, straightened my shoulders and repeated in my mind, "Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her." Something inside me hardened. I was no extra, no prop in their pretty picture. I was still the woman who had given everything, every last dollar, every ounce of energy, to build this home. And I still held the keys. I walked to the buffet table, set the tray right in front of her, in the exact spot where she had handed me that $20 bill. The room quieted. Champagne stopped pouring. My heart beat slow, steady, and I said softly but firmly, "I'll take these back." I turned, walked out without a word, without a goodbye. Outside the sunlight felt sharper, clearer. For the first time in years I felt light, like a door had closed for good. I wrapped the tray in a linen napkin, the croissants glowing warm in the sunlight, and carried them to my car. Each step felt strong, certain. I placed the tray in the passenger seat like it belonged there and whispered, "Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her." I thought back to when this all started. My son once told me he had found the perfect house in the northern suburbs of Atlanta. My heart swelled with pride. It was a simple 3-bedroom place in a quiet cul-de-sac, with a dogwood tree in the front yard and a screened porch that caught the morning sun. He had big dreams but no credit history to back them. He and Kelly were just starting out, barely making it on internships and early career jobs. They needed help, and that help was me. I cashed out every savings bond, called 3 old friends from church for small loans, and even pawned the heirloom necklace my mother had given me when I turned 21. I never told anyone about that. With shaky hands but a determined heart, I walked into the realtor's office with the down payment and signed as the primary owner. The bank required a solid cosigner, and I was it. We all agreed it was temporary. Once we build our credit, we'll refinance in our names, my son said, hopeful. They moved in first. I followed 2 weeks later after the plumbing was fixed and the carpets cleaned. I took the smallest room near the laundry and turned it into my own little haven. I didn't need much, just a window, a shelf for books, and a reason to feel useful. And for a while I had that. I paid the first year of property taxes without hesitation. When hailstorms punched holes in the shingles that first spring, I was the one who called the roofers. When the baby burned with a fever of 103, I stayed up through the night, holding his small body against mine while his mother cried from exhaustion in the other room. I cooked meals, cleaned every corner, clipped coupons, and scoured local sales so we could keep the bills manageable. When their car broke down during that bitter February cold snap, I handed them mine, my old sedan still running fine, so they wouldn't be stranded. At church, I proudly told everyone we were building something together, a real family. And for a time it truly felt like we were. I watched my son graduate with his MBA, walking across that stage in his navy robe. He held my hand just before the ceremony and whispered, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." His wife, Kelly, clung to his other arm, their baby resting against her chest. I still have that photograph, tucked in a shoebox under my bed. It used to sit on the mantel, framed for everyone to see, until one day it disappeared quietly without a word. After his graduation, things began to shift, subtle at first, like moving a piece of furniture. You only notice when you trip over it. When guests visited, they started referring to the house as ours. "We bought it a few years ago," Kelly would say, smiling, skipping over the truth of who had really signed those papers. I never corrected her in front of anyone. I stopped being asked about repairs. Handymen began showing up unannounced, measuring windows, wandering through the kitchen. When I gently asked, Kelly shrugged. "Oh, we didn't think you'd be interested in that kind of stuff." My son just smiled and said, "Don't worry, Mom. We've got it." Then invitations to family dinners slowed to a trickle. They had their own friends, their own routines, their own private little world. Even the baby, now a boy of 4, stopped calling me grandma. Sometimes he'd call me old hag, repeating it with a laugh, as if I were just some houseguest who'd overstayed her welcome. One afternoon I overheard Kelly on the phone, her voice light and cruel as she laughed. "We just keep her here because it helps with taxes and all," she said. Yeah, she still thinks she's part of the plan. Bless her heart. That night I sat in my room staring at my checkbook, the one with the worn leather cover. My name was still on the deed. I still paid half the utilities. But emotionally, legally, spiritually, I had already been erased. That winter, when the gutters froze and cracked, they hired a contractor without asking me. When I tried to speak up, my son patted my shoulder and said, "Let us handle it, Mom. You've done enough." Done enough. As if there was ever a finish line for motherhood, as if love had an expiration date. I began to feel like a ghost in the very house I had helped build. They spoke around me, moved past me, their lives drawing circles wider and wider until I was left outside of them. I became the nanny, the quiet extra, the part of the story they planned to edit out. And still, every month I wrote my half of the mortgage check. I still bought groceries. I still picked up prescriptions when needed. I clung to hope, convincing myself that one day, love would return like spring after a long winter. But winters in Georgia are deceiving. They look soft, but the cold cuts deep when you least expect it. And this cold settled not in the walls, but in the hearts I once trusted. So I waited. I gathered strength. I folded every memory, every midnight feeding, every tuition payment, every time I said yes when my bank account screamed no, into one quiet truth. I had been loyal. But loyalty doesn't guarantee love, and it sure doesn't guarantee respect. They thought I was soft, that my silence meant ignorance instead of grace. But I was the one who built this house. Not just with cement and contracts but with sacrifice, with prayer, with everything I had. And now, that foundation was cracking not because of me but because they had forgotten who laid those bricks. Then came the day that broke me. One chilly morning I opened Facebook just to watch my grandson's school recital video, and suddenly my chest tightened. Their profile, the Johnson family profile, was gone for me. Blocked. At first I thought it was a mistake. I refreshed the page again and again. Still blocked. My hands shook as I scrolled through a mutual friend's feed and found a photo from their Christmas party. There they were, smiling by the fireplace, stockings hung, ornaments glittering. But I wasn't in it. I zoomed in on the photo, scanning every inch, and I saw it. There was an empty space where I used to stand, right where I once handed out my homemade fruitcake. The caption under the photo read, "Just us, no extras." My stomach knotted. A decade of my life poured into that house, into those people, and now I was just extra. That afternoon, while tidying the living room, I heard Kelly again, her voice low but clear as she talked on the phone. I pretended to dust, my heart already heavy. She laughed. A sharp, cold laugh. "She's suffocating," Kelly said. "I told the little one to just call me Mom. Don't let them know she's blood, it makes it easier." Blood. The word hit me like a punch. I had carried that boy's father, cared for him through every fever, every heartbreak. I had baked cookies, sent holiday cards, prayed for them every night. And now they wanted to erase me, to pretend I never existed. Then Kelly's next words froze me in place. "We're building a case, you know. Gathering evidence that she's not all there. A hospital visit, a few red flags, and boom, we can get her committed. Old age is the perfect disguise." Committed. My fingers tightened around the feather duster until my knuckles hurt. I left the room quietly, my satin slippers the only sound marking that I had been there at all. My heart pounded, desperate to escape my chest. That night, sleep refused to come. I stared at the ceiling fan, counting breaths, whispering my mother's words in my mind. Committed. No child should ever whisper that word about their mother. I turned onto my side, clasping my hands under my chin, thinking of my own mother's hands, the ones that raised us with warmth and trust. I realized then I had trusted the wrong promise. That blood never fades, that love doesn't dry up. In the days that followed, I noticed more signs. The front door was always locked behind me. Little things, like a frozen picture frame or a missing pair of glasses, never got fixed, and no one seemed to care. The house felt sterile, too quiet. I had once taught Sunday school lessons in this very living room, and now I was afraid to sneeze. The telephone stopped ringing. My credit card, the one I used for shared groceries, was suddenly declined. When I asked, they just said it had expired. No one bothered to tell me. Whenever I asked about the card, Kelly would let out that soft, condescending sigh and say, "I took care of it, Mom. Don't worry about your mind." My son Ryan would look at me with those sorrowful eyes, whispering, "Mom, just let it go. We've got all this insurance now. We handle it." It felt like being smothered not by love but by calculation. Every gesture, every polite smile, it wasn't care, it was strategy. A mortgage signed, a breakfast ignored, a hand-me-down car driven away without thanks. For a long time I told myself to wait, to hold back. I thought they would see me again, remember who I was, invite me back into their hearts when they realized their mistake. But when I overheard the words hospital visits spoken as casually as grocery lists, something inside me rebelled. I was not a charity case. I was not a secret to be hidden. I was their mother, their grandmother. A living woman who deserved honesty, respect, and the right to make her own choices. So I started taking notes. In a spiral notebook beside my bed, I wrote down dates, times, words, everything. The Facebook block. The Christmas photo caption, "Just us, no extras." Her words about me suffocating them. I even kept the florist's receipt for the Christmas wreath I'd left at Thanksgiving, and bank stubs showing how I still paid utilities and cable. Every detail mattered. Each morning I sat by the kitchen window sipping tea, staring out at the dogwood tree that bloomed every April. It stayed steady, blooming year after year, no matter who noticed. That was my new foundation. I whispered to myself, "You will outlast this. You will not fade quietly." I called an attorney, David Green, a man I once gave a ride to when his car broke down years ago. He remembered me instantly, his voice calm but firm. "You will not be silenced, Mrs. Johnson." That night I didn't sleep in peace but in survival. I understood what they had tried to take from me, My identity, my dignity, my sense of belonging. But I still held one thing they could never erase, the truth. And that truth was the first stone in rebuilding myself. I arrived at my grandson's 4th birthday party carrying a wooden tray of fresh croissants, still warm, soft with butter, every swirl of dough perfected that morning. The living room was bright with balloons, paper streamers, and the happy chaos of little feet on the hardwood floors. Parents sipped coffee, chatting over laughter. The banner read, "Happy birthday, Samuel." I set the tray on the buffet table, expecting at least a smile, maybe a simple thank you. Instead, I caught Kelly's eyes. Her lips curved into a polite smile, but her eyes stayed cold. She turned to her friends, her voice low but sharp. "Oh, look," she said with a quiet laugh. "Our nanny is trying her hand at baking." The laugh wasn't warm. It was the kind of laugh people use when they think they're above you. My breath caught. My fingers tightened around the tray. Nanny. Not grandma. Not mom. Just a helper. Then I heard Ryan's footsteps behind me. Without a word, he reached past me, lifted the tray and carried it into the pantry. A second later, I heard the dull, sickening thud of my pastries hitting the garbage bin. The sound echoed in my ears, louder than the party noise. My knees felt weak. My stomach sank. Ryan walked back out, set the now empty tray on the table, and didn't meet my eyes. Kelly's sharp gaze lingered on me, cool and dismissive, as if I were just some accessory she no longer wanted. A quiet hush moved through the adults. Some smiled awkwardly, trapped between manners and discomfort. A little boy toddled over, peeking into the bin, frowning at the discarded croissants. And then Samuel's small voice cut through the air. "Mommy, why is Grandma not sitting with us?" I turned, my voice soft but steady. "He's asking why I'm not at the table," I said. Kelly sighed, loud enough for everyone to hear, but her words were aimed at me, not him. "Because no one sits and eats with strangers." Strangers. The word ricocheted through me. Not Grandma. A stranger. I looked at Samuel, his bright little face now clouded with confusion, his brows furrowed. I swallowed hard, forcing a thin smile while my hands shook until I clenched them tight. Kelly brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, already dismissing me. Ryan stood stiff beside her, shoulders squared like a soldier, silent, refusing to look my way, refusing to defend me. Everything I had given, the late nights with fevers, the school lunches, the birthday gifts bought when I skipped meals to save, collapsed in that moment. My identity crumbled in front of everyone, erased with one sentence, one laugh, one thrown-away tray. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I wouldn't give them that. I leaned down, kissed Samuel's cheek and said gently, "Happy birthday, my love." My voice didn't break, though I felt brittle inside. I turned, my heels clicking on the wood floor, walking away as the party moved on without me. Laughter rose again, chatter flowed as if I were nothing but air. Outside, the Georgia humidity pressed against me, heavy and warm, almost holding me still. I stepped onto the porch, set the empty tray down carefully, and let the layers of hurt settle deep in my stomach. Slow, heavy, serious. And then I made a decision. I folded the tray into its linen cloth and carried it beyond the house, walking to the edge of the backyard where red dirt met a line of bamboo. I pressed the cloth into the soil, covering those pastries, burying them like the respect I had given for so many years. Afterward, I walked to my car. Each step felt like a promise. Sitting in the driver's seat, I gripped the steering wheel, closed my eyes and let the silence speak for me. I will not matter less. I will not fade away. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't even shed a tear. Instead, I honored myself by acknowledging what had happened. And in that silence, I decided this moment would mark a shift. I would rise again, stronger, clearer, unstoppable. Not for revenge, but to reclaim the woman I had always been. In my rearview mirror, I saw the party continuing, laughter spilling out of the windows. But I didn't look back for long. I looked at myself instead, at my own reflection, stoic, determined, unbroken. And I whispered, "Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her." That night, as the sun set behind the pines, casting long golden shadows across the living room floor, I opened an old folder. Dust floated in the air like quiet witnesses. It was time. I had gone to the side cabinet to grab my reading glasses, but when I opened the drawer I froze. It was unlocked, paper sticking out just enough to catch my eye. My heart fluttered with that quiet, warning hush that comes before a storm. This wasn't careless, it smelled of intent. I reached in, pulled out a crisp photocopy and unfolded it slowly. The first page hit me like a punch. It was a psychological evaluation, official-looking headers, a bold red seal stamped at the top. My hands shook as I adjusted my glasses to read. The diagnosis stared back at me. Mild delusional disorder, recommends continued supervision by a responsible adult. Limitations on self-directed decision-making. And there at the bottom was my name, and my signature. My heart pounded like a warning bell as I flipped to the next page. There, in handwriting meant to mimic mine, were the words, "Admission to Green Meadows Nursing Facility. Effective immediately." Below it, blank spaces waited to be filled in. Legal guardian, emergency contact, decision-making capacity. Full. The lines were pre-scored, like someone had been planning to fill them in the moment they could. Above it, scrawled in cold, unmistakable ink, "Urgent. Require immediate action." I sank to the floor, my knees thudding against the wood. My breath caught in my throat, but my mind raced. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was an oversight. This was an erasure, deliberate and calculated. Someone wanted me gone, not just overlooked but locked away. My hand trembled as I touched the photocopy, my mother's old Bible resting in my lap as if to steady me. I thought of her prayers, of mine, less pleading now, more resolve. From the next room, voices drifted in, low and clipped like conspirators whispering behind curtains. I edged closer to the doorway, clutching the papers against my chest. The living room light spilled across my evening dress as I stood in the shadow, listening. "It will work," Kelly whispered, her voice crisp and urgent. "She's already confused about her keys and bills. One fainting episode, hospital protocol, and I just sign at intake. Easy." My son's voice followed, thin and hesitant, weighed with reluctance. And what about the lawyer?" "He's covered," Kelly replied coolly. "We'll feed it to the court. She's a burden." My stomach turned. They were ready to commit me, and they believed it would be clean, quiet, final. Ryan, my son, didn't even fight it. His silence made him complicit. They were architects of my erasure. I retreated to my room, the papers pressed tightly to my chest. My vision blurred with disbelief, but my mind was already sharpening. They thought I would go willingly, that age had made me fragile, compliant, broken. But I was none of those things. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, mind lit like a flare. I wouldn't confront them yet, not without safety, proof, a plan. So I began to organize. I gathered everything. The red-sealed evaluation, the forged admission request, my bank statements proving I still paid half the utilities, mortgage agreements, and my copy of the deed showing I held 55% ownership of the house. I emailed David Green, my attorney, attaching only a quiet request. "We need to talk. Urgent." He replied within an hour, "Meet me Tuesday. Bring documents. Don't let them near you in the meantime. Be safe." Felt like holding a lifeline. I spent the next morning building my case. I created a timeline. Every date I signed a mortgage check, every contractor call, every utility payment. I transcribed Kelly's words about me suffocating them, stamped with the date and time. I labeled the folder Martha Defense. Then I reached out to Lisa Warren, one of my former students, now a reporter at WSB-TV in Atlanta. I called her softly, letting just enough urgency slip into my tone. "Lisa," I said, "this story is bigger than loneliness." She agreed to listen. I emailed her key facts, withholding names for now, but it was enough to make her heart race. By morning, the Georgia sun rose bright and clean, mocking the darkness of what they had planned. I placed the red-sealed evaluation in an envelope marked evidence and tucked it into my tote bag alongside my phone, where I had already recorded every call, every whisper. I packed a spare set of clothes, wrote down emergency contacts, and rehearsed my words in the mirror. "I have rights. You are violating my civil liberties. I refuse to be erased." I met my own reflection, head high, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Not fear. Not panic. Not disgrace. Determination. They might have tried to carve me out, but I had carved back with facts, with witnesses, with the law. I was still here. I had the papers. I had my voice. And soon they would learn you cannot commit someone who refuses to be silenced. I placed the tote by the door, closing my eyes briefly. In that stillness I could almost taste possibility. This wasn't just a plan, it was alive. Because I refused to be erased. Because I was not done. That afternoon, while tightening a loose hinge on the back door, I found them, the hidden cameras. 2 tiny lenses tucked into the siding of the screened porch and another on the hallway landing near the guest bedroom. Each had a small sticker, live security feed. Property of Johnson family. My breath caught. This wasn't just paranoia, they were watching me, tracking me. My heart pounded, but I moved carefully. I angled my body between the hallway camera's view, slid my phone from my pocket and pressed record. Then I walked calmly back to the kitchen where Kelly and Ryan sat, chatting over iced tea and cupcakes. Their voices were low, intimate, but I crept close enough to hear. "She's so deluded," Kelly hissed. "You saw her face when I said Nanny. She still thinks she belongs. We need something bigger." Ryan's voice followed, tired but resigned. "Hospital procedure works faster when it looks like confusion. We wait for her to slip again. Then you take the papers. Sign me in. It's clean." Clean. The word cut through me, but my fists only tightened. The phone recorded everything. My pulse steadied. This was evidence stacking itself. Later that evening, I locked myself in my room, played the recording back and listened to her cold words again. Each sentence rang like a church bell. I trimmed the audio in a simple editor, cut out the background noise, added timestamps and saved it. I plugged in an old USB drive from my late husband's law office, symbolic, solid, and stored the files in 3 formats: MP3, WAV and text transcription. I stared at the screen, the files saved, glowing like a shield. This wasn't fear anymore. This was justice in motion. I labeled the folder "Property of Martha Johnson, Evidence." Then I moved on to gathering the camera footage itself. Navigating through the security system settings turned out to be surprisingly easy. It wasn't even password protected. What I found was infuriating. Hours of me just living, getting water in the kitchen, tightening a loose shutter, feeding the dog. Normal, quiet moments of life, all recorded and watched as if I were under constant suspicion. I downloaded 3 hours of footage and saved it to my USB drive under the label Footage Cam ABC. Sitting back in my chair, the silence felt almost holy, not empty but purposeful. I picked up the phone and called my attorney in Atlanta, David Green, the same man I'd once driven to a hearing when his car broke down years ago. His voice was steady, professional. "Have you found anything else?" he asked. "Yes," I said, my tone stronger than it had been in weeks. "I have video and audio of them plotting, planning to sign me into a nursing facility. I have all 3 camera feeds plus the conversations." There was a pause, then his tone shifted, firm and decisive. "We'll start with an injunction. I'll prepare for an emergency hearing. Bring everything Tuesday." I hung up and immediately composed an email to Lisa Warren, my former student who now worked as a journalist for WSB-TV. I attached a photo of the hidden camera lens and wrote, "Exclusive. Surveillance footage shows daughter-in-law and son plotting to declare me mentally unfit and commit me, the primary co-owner of this house, to a nursing facility. I have audio, video and a full timeline. Please call." 15 minutes later, her reply came, "Got it. I'll call tomorrow." For the first time in months, I felt a wave of control returning. That night, I slept with the USB drive clutched in my hands, whispering to myself, "I am not afraid of your plans. I am not invisible. I am still here." Tuesday morning, I arrived at David Green's office promptly at 9. The scent of polished oak and leather-bound files greeted me as I stepped inside. He rose, extending a firm handshake. "Martha, are you ready?" "I'm ready," I said, my heart steady. Together, we reviewed every piece of evidence laid neatly across the conference table. The original deed listing me as 55% owner, past mortgage statements, property tax receipts in my name, invoices from contractors I had hired and paid, the forged psychological evaluation, the fake nursing home admission form and the audio and video files. David nodded, his expression firm. "We'll file a partition sale petition in Fulton County Superior Court. Because you're a majority co-owner, you have the right to request either a division or a forced sale of the property without their consent. We can move quickly. I'll file this afternoon." I exhaled, relief and determination mixing like 2 sides of the same breath. This wasn't vengeance. It was justice, carved back piece by piece through law. By early afternoon, I left the courthouse holding a stamped copy of the petition, my first official step toward reclaiming my place. That same afternoon, I sent Lisa selected evidence from the USB with a note. My name is Martha Johnson. I am the 55% owner of this home. But my family tried to remove me, mentally, legally, physically. I own more than a kitchen. I own more than crumbs. This is my fight. By Monday night I received her response. We'll air your story Wednesday at 5. Fear and hope twisted inside me as I read those words. On Wednesday morning the headline appeared, Georgia grandmother takes legal action after family snares her rights. Just, nanny no more. My phone buzzed non-stop. Friends I hadn't heard from in years wrote, we saw you. We support you. Respect to you, Martha. That evening my attorney and I sat in my own living room watching the broadcast. The anchor, calm and measured, opened the report. Tonight's top story. A respected grandmother in suburban Atlanta is fighting back after being publicly referred to as just the nanny. Exclusive documents and footage show her daughter-in-law and son allegedly plotting to have her institutionalized and legally cut off from the home she co-owns. Clips played, Kelly's voice cold and clear, we wait for her to slip again. A freeze frame showed the camera lens hidden near the hallway. The anchor continued. Records show Mrs. Johnson holds 55% of the home's title and has paid property taxes and maintenance for years. She has filed a partition sale petition to legally reclaim what she already owns. The report cut to neighbors interviewed on the street. One said, I always knew Mrs. Johnson had a heart of gold. She shoveled snow for us last winter, brought soup when my son was sick. It's heartbreaking to hear how she was treated. No one deserves that. Tears stung my eyes. Not from shame but from validation. For decades I had been the quiet strength behind this house. And now finally I was seen. Within hours social media exploded. On WSB-TV's Facebook page comments poured in, bless her heart. What an incredible woman. Don't mess with a grandmother's love. Share this until everyone remembers what family means. One YouTube commenter wrote, they tried to erase her but she's leaving a legacy instead. That night, the Johnsons returned home to dozens of messages from friends, church members, even distant relatives, all asking the same thing, are you okay? The hush that had once followed me was now theirs to endure. I sat quietly in the living room, sipping tea, watching their reflections in the dark screen of the turned-off television. They entered cautiously as if stepping into a stranger's house. Kelly tried to speak first, her voice trembling. Mom, we didn't mean for it to be like this. Ryan looked stricken, avoiding my eyes. Mom, we can fix this. But I had already fixed it. I had taken back my dignity, my voice, my place. The court will address our disagreement, I said, rising slowly, feeling every ache of the years I had sacrificed. Until then, please respect my space. I didn't ask for apologies. I asked for honesty. They both nodded, humbled, unsure how to reclaim what they had lost. Later that night I texted David, you helped me reclaim more than property. His reply was simple, you reclaimed your voice. I closed my eyes with that thought. No, I couldn't undo the wrongs, but I had righted the one that mattered most. I was no longer invisible. I had proven that strength doesn't always shout, that justice can be lawful, and that respect, long overdue, can still be earned. The next morning, sunlight poured through the curtains. I stepped onto the front porch, clipboard in hand, the air fresh with possibility. And for the first time in a long time I felt buoyant. A week had passed since my story aired and the neighborhood felt different. As I walked slowly down the driveway I stopped short at the curb. Pinned to my mailbox was a neatly printed poster on white cardstock. A family who treats their mother as an unwanted guest will lose their home. And below it, scrawled in bold black marker, show respect or leave. A ripple of disbelief and relief moved through me. My neighbors weren't staying silent anymore. I tucked the poster into my pocket and walked toward the yard, where a sleek for sale sign stood in the grass. The large letters read, for sale, co-owner dispute. Contact agent. The realtor's name glowed in the sunlight like a verdict. I pressed my palm against the sign, its cold surface a reminder of what they had tried to take from me. Across the street Mrs. Thompson, an elderly neighbor, paused while walking her dog. Her face softened with empathy as she offered me a small wave before moving on. That moment reminded me, my fight had never truly been mine alone. It echoed across hedges and front lawns, in quiet ways I had never imagined. When I stepped back inside, Ryan stood by the kitchen island, his shoulders tight, while Kelly stood beside him, hands clasped, her eyes glistening. They looked like people awaiting judgment. "Mom, please," Ryan began, his voice trembling. "You always said you wanted to keep this house for us, for our family." I laid the poster and a photo of the realtor's sign on the counter, arranging them like exhibits in a courtroom. They stared at them silently, their faces heavy with guilt. "I did want that," I said slowly. "I still do. I wanted these walls to hold us together. But you two made a choice. You treated me as invisible. I had two options: stay silent and disappear, or stand up for myself." Kelly's face crumpled, tears slipping down her cheeks. "We never meant to hurt you," she whispered. "It just happened. We didn't think." Ryan stepped closer, his voice thick. "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have defended you. I was ashamed. I was weak. They expected me to crumble, to fall back into submission, but I stayed firm. I thought of the evidence, the neighbors' support, and the quiet power of the law. This isn't about punishment," I said, placing a hand on the poster. "It's about respect. It's about truth. You can apologize and earn back your place, or I can move forward without you." The living room felt like a courtroom. Their guilt hung in the air like dust, heavy and undeniable. I tapped the image of the real estate sign. "That house is half mine. I can sell it. I can walk away. But I still hope, if you can look me in the eye and mean it, that someday this can be our home again." Kelly broke first, sobbing as she stepped forward to hug me. Ryan stood still, tears pooling in his eyes. He couldn't say the words yet, but his gaze pleaded with me. Later that afternoon, Carla, one of my neighbors, stopped by and asked if she could share her own story. Sitting in my kitchen, she recorded us on her phone, speaking quietly but sincerely. She talked about the Christmas I brought casseroles when her husband was recovering from surgery, about the snowy nights when I shoveled my driveway so guests could get in safely, and about the time I lent her money after she was laid off. Her words were sweet, genuine, and unfiltered, the antidote to their scorn. That evening, Carla posted the video online. Within hours, comments flooded in. "This is what family looks like. Grandmother of the year, hands down. I respect for her strength." The digital world had taken my side, loud and clear. That night, David Green, my attorney, called. "I filed a motion for mediation," he said. "If both parties agree, maybe we can resolve this without court." His voice carried a note of hope. By evening, Ryan and Kelly sat side by side on the sofa, holding hands like two people clinging to something fragile. Kelly's voice cracked as she spoke. "Will you stay? Will you stay with us if we show respect?" I looked at them, choosing my words carefully. "We can begin again, even from the ground up. But respect isn't a handshake. It's action." Ryan nodded, his face earnest. "We'll make it right." The next morning, the for sale sign was gone. 2 days later, a new sign appeared in the front window. It read, "Family welcome here." Standing on the porch, I realized I had never set out to destroy a house. I had fought to restore a home. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the cul-de-sac lights glow in the evening quiet. Years had passed, some lost, some regained, but now there was hope. I had taken action. I had reclaimed respect. I had given them a choice: honor me or face my departure. And now they were choosing honor. That, I thought, is how you come back from being erased. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight with the truth. I closed my eyes, listening to the house, now alive again with soft whispers of reconciliation, and whispered to myself, "Mother is fine. And now so is this home."